Hello, sir. May I take your order?
Just a coffee, please.
He replied with a sympathetic smile. When he got the coffee, he brought it to a table on a corner and sat on a chair. While he was waiting for Detective Carver and Detective Gore to arrive, he checked again if no one was paying attention to him, and when he was sure, he opened his suitcase and looked for the file of the new murder case they were investigating. A 43-year-old woman was stabbed 27 times all along her body, 7 of them on the chest and 5 on her head. She was found in her house by her son, who found her lying on the kitchen floor with a horrified countenance. No forced entry. Her husband committed suicide 2 years ago, letting her take care of the 2 children. Their youngest child is a boy, who was 15 when his father passed away, and their oldest a 17-year-old girl. So far, they could only talk with their youngest child. Once the daughter has been MIA since the day of the murder, she is now their main suspect.
"Where are you gazing at, Aiken?"
asked a worried Carver while holding a cup of coffee in his hand. Gore peered with a chocolate milkshake in one hand and a croissant with ham in the other, smiling as he put down his food on the table.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Aiken replied as he stood up and shook his partner's hand, giving a warm smile.
Any news on this case yet?
He asked, dropping the smile.
"Well..."
Adam Carver started to speak as he and Julian Gore sat in the chairs in front of Lael Aiken.
"We tried to contact other family relatives to Mrs.
Faye.
Right, Mrs. Faye. But no one seems to know where her daughter might be. Their family was kind of a closed circle the past year, and it was difficult for anyone to know anything about them. We also tried to seek any evidence that would possibly tell us where she would go, or if there was a reason that would make her kill her own mother, but it was in vain."
We questioned her friends, but they didn't add any valuable details that could lead us to her whereabouts. What about you? What did you find so far?
I've searched the family history. As it seems, they have quite a history. Mrs. Faye, Eleanor Faye, and her husband, Frederick Faye, were trying to have children when Mrs. Faye was around 24 years old and Mr. Faye 25. But after 2 years trying to have babies, they found out that Mr. Faye was infertile, causing a mild depression on him. They both decided to adopt, and 1 year later, they welcomed Harmony Smith, only 3 years old, and Abel Nye, 1 year old at the time. Mrs. Faye was diagnosed with a skin cancer 2 years ago, which made her husband's depression worsen, and after a few days, he committed suicide. He took his own life by driving his car off an abyss. In the year before, they also found that he was bipolar, type 2, which explained the depression phase and the hypomanic phase.
The hypomanic phase?
Yes. I looked through their bank accounts, all the account movements, I mean, and he liked to spend a lot of money on random things like trips, expensive jewelry, expensive stuff, you know. That was when he was on the manic phase, when he felt euphoric, yet he didn't look extremely happy as you might think. Not only did he have this need for buying expensive stuff impulsively, but his work yield increased substantially when he was on this phase. These phases can last about, shall I say, 3 or 4 days. Once we're talking about a type 2 and not a type 1 bipolar disorder. Otherwise, it would last a week or so, and then it's the depression phase turn, which I guess you are familiar with this concept?
Oh, I see. You'd be a good psychologist, Detective Aiken.
Lael smiled embarrassed, scratching the back of his head, tussling his blonde hair. He had studied psychology in college and thought that it was really important in their work. The human behavior was still being studied and had a lot to be spoken about, let alone the criminal behavior, which was still poorly studied. Carver crossed his arms, patiently waiting for him to continue his report.
Thanks, I guess. But what's relevant in the story is that apparently, when they discovered his disease, instead of trying to bring him to a psychiatric hospital so he could receive a better monitoring, they preferred to ignore his situation and keep on living like nothing happened. So, when they discovered that Mrs. Faye had cancer, and he was neither controlled, neither medicated, the chances of not being able to control him was about 70%, since he loved his wife more than himself. Of course, as you saw, cancer did not kill her, and gave her a chance to live for a year, and probably would have lived more time if she wasn't murdered. but one has to think like him to understand.
I wonder, how did you manage to understand the entire situation?
It wasn't really hard, actually. I guess it's my intuition, too. It feels right this way, doesn't it?
I guess you're right. But what does that add to the case?
If you think about it, if you think as if you were the children, I mean, they had to get through a lot. Their father committing suicide, their mother having cancer, the fact that only 2 months before it, they acknowledged that they were both adopted. And don't forget that they are teenagers. They react in an impulsive way, which is probably the reason the daughter hasn't been found yet. Also, that last year they've been living on a not communicate outside the house way, which meant that they were not feeling very well, I bet. But if we can't forget to consider any other
Wait, now I remember. After speaking to the boy, who was quite broken and sad about the situation, I contacted the school to confirm the son's alibi, as he said that he was in school at the time of the murder. They'd said that he skipped the afternoon classes, which meant that he left school around 1:30. The murder was around 2:15, which can possibly make the son a suspect too.
For fuck's sake! Why did you only remember that now?
Carver shook his head and covered his face with his hands. Aiken looked surprised towards Gore.
How could he forget something so important?
I'm sorry. I've only remembered now after what Aiken told us that maybe the kid might have something to do with the murder. And as the daughter is missing, he maybe had murdered her too.
Don't jump into conclusions without certainties. We can't say the kid is guilty without having any concrete intel that makes him the murderer besides the fact that his alibi isn't confirmed. But, good job, Lael. Oh, and you too, Julian. He has to put his shit together. Well, I'm gonna make a call now. I'll come back in 5 minutes.
Alright.
As he went outside, Gore looked at Aiken with a sympathetic face.
How are you dealing with everything, Lael?
You mean the amnesia thing? I still have no memory of what happened after we supposedly got into the chopper to investigate that island, you know. Even after you told me. I guess I thought the memories would appear eventually, but I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I can imagine that it sucks. So, you still have no memory at all from the past year?
Nope. No memory.
He knew that it wasn't entirely true. At least, it was what he thought and believed, since the day he realized he couldn't remember anything that happened on that mission. The day he woke up on the hospital, exactly 2 weeks ago, he had been dreaming about the same thing all over again. It is always blurry, but he remembers being in a forest, captured by the inhabitants, forced to watch many of his colleagues getting murdered by them. He also remembers seeing a woman, whose face was blurred. Although he could see, she had a weird symbol on her forehead. Tattooed or not, he couldn't figure it out. Who he believes that was someone important. After it, he only remembers running away from something or someone and screaming as he was being tied up to a mattress in a place that reminded him of a hospital.
Are you feeling okay? Are you remembering something right now?
I'm fine. Thanks, Julian. I was trying to remember what you guys said about what happened that time. I forgot again.
He had heard the story too many times, but somehow he felt like something wasn't right.
Again? I guess you probably shouldn't have started to work this week yet.
No, it's fine, really. Besides, you guys needed me anyway, so here I am, doing my job. I just like to listen to it and try to remember what happened.
He apologized as he sat straight on his chair and made a calm countenance. Julian Gore hesitated for a moment, and after a sigh, he started to tell the story again.
It looked like it didn't even skip a beat.
So, our mission last year was to go to an unknown island that was said to have people there, probably shipwrecked or something. We went there in order to know what was happening and to rescue them, but it seemed they wanted us dead and did everything they could to kill us. We had to kill them. We also found out they kidnapped, tortured, and killed anyone who got there. They were complete savages. Some of us died in their hands, but at the same time we killed everyone. There weren't many anyway. I remember that when you were running away from one of their attacks, as you were out of ammo and you were seeking for more, you tripped on your foot and hit your head on a rock, making you black out for a few hours. Apparently that hit in the head made you fall into a coma, made you lose your memories. The doctor said that it was a result of a deep lesion in the temporal lobe of your brain, the hippocampus, which was responsible for the memories and stuff.
All right, I won't ask you anymore. Don't worry. I'll remember this time.
Again, nothing that was said made him remember anything.
He's hiding something, or lying to me.
Gore smiled sympathetically. He knew Julian since he began to work as a detective, when he was only 21 years old. 5 years ago now. Julian is 7 years older than him, but he always kept his youth attitude along all that time, which was helpful to integrate Aiken into the department. He particularly stands out for his height. He's 6'3", with his dark short hair and green eyes that made many women attracted to him, even though he never seemed interested at all. "They're not my type," he usually said, when someone teased him for ignoring the major females. His delineated face with no facial hair made him 10 years younger, and he also wasn't very good at lying.
"Shall we go, ladies?"
Both detectives stood up and started walking towards the exit. Adam never seemed to like Lael since the beginning.
Don't get upset. He's always like this.
Julian apologized when Lael commented that with him one day. As rumors spread, Carver was not really happy to have a kid in his team. He's 47 now, and despite being only 5'4", his brown hair and brown eyes with his hoarse voice was enough to make anyone respect him. Well, that and the fact that he was a MMA worldwide champion in the late 90s. His grumpy face with laden eyebrows is his favorite greeting to his team. Even though this facet makes him despicable, everyone likes him because behind a great mask hides a great person. At least, it is what Aiken always believes. He was a kickboxing fighter, thanks to Carver,
who thought he was a good punching bag.
Lael started practicing that sport, proving to him that he wasn't just a good punching bag, but also a good puncher. After they arrived to the department and discussed the news with their boss, they interrogated Abel, now the main suspect.
It didn't take long until he caved and confessed what he had done.
I was tired! I always knew that they weren't my parents, but I didn't fucking care. He was a shitty father who only cared about himself. Seriously, who thinks about committing suicide when one knows that another person has cancer? A normal person would support my mother, would try to reach the kids. I don't know, but abandoning us like this? Oh, what a jerk! My mother got worse and didn't have any patience for us. And my so brave sister decided to run away, claiming to be tired of that life. Well, what about me? Why, everyone left me all alone with another person who gave up on living even though is still breathing. I just helped her going to where she wanted to go. To her death, to hell. Wasn't that what she wanted? I feel free now. I feel relieved.
I'm so glad you're enjoying your freedom, because you're going to face prison, you little brat.
Adam Carver made a sarcastic smile as he was moving towards him to put the handcuffs on.
I'm only 17. You can't put me in prison.
Oh, is that so? But guess what? I've heard that your 18th birthday is next week. I'm gonna make you party in a prison jail cell that day.
When Aiken arrived home, he took off his shoes and turned on the CD player.
What a day.
He played Deceiver of the Gods album from Amon Amarth.
He ran towards the kitchen and put pre-cooked lasagna in the microwave.
After he took a bath, he ate the lasagna.
Had an argument with his neighbor on the floor below because of lack of music taste.
Turned off the music and laid on the bed trying to sleep. Before falling asleep, many thoughts crossed his mind. The day that he was accepted as a detective. The day that he found out his girlfriend cheated on him. The family Faye case. The day that he was in the chopper and...
Why? Why can't I remember anything? Why do I feel that there's something hidden?
He thought as he fell asleep.